Hi, I'm Tallis Barker from waterfasting.org, and I'd like to talk about a question which comes up the whole time. That is, can I work during a water fast? Now, as you can hear in the background, there's probably a chainsaw going on. So there are certain circumstances when the answer is a definite no. If your work involves heavy physical activity, which could possibly put yourself at risk, absolutely, you should not be operating heavy machinery or chainsaws. In addition to that, there's one other set of circumstances when I would just highly recommend do not undertake a water fast if you have to work. And that is if your job involves the security and safety of others. So for instance, if you're a taxi driver, let's say, obviously you have people coming into your car, you're driving around, their life is in your hands. And as much as I would argue that, for instance, driving means under a water fast, your reaction times are probably going to be quicker than in everyday life, certainly for a water fast which is not too extended. The problem is that if something were to happen and there were an accident, there's no question that that people would look at the water fast as being the cause of the problem, and that's going to get you potentially into a lot of trouble. Most people don't have jobs like this, though. So if you don't have to operate heavy machinery, if your job does not involve the safety and security of others, then there's no reason why you can't work during the water fast. However, having said that, there are a whole bunch of disadvantages to doing so, and I'd like to talk about these. The first problem with trying to work through a fast is the fact that you're probably going to experience significantly lower energy levels than in everyday life. And there are two main reasons for this. The first is ketosis. Ketosis, of course, being the fat-burning mechanism which takes place during a fast. Most people find that ketosis will never really be able to compensate 100% for the lack of energy provided by sugars and carbohydrates. In other words, your everyday metabolism. And in addition to this, there's another problem which some people find as well, and that is low blood pressure. Fasting does lower your blood pressure, and beyond a certain point, that translates into feeling sluggish and slower. So these two problems compound on each other, unfortunately, and that makes it a lot harder. Not to mention the fact that there's another problem here in terms of energy levels: stamina. Most people find that during a fast, their stamina is not the same as in everyday life. You may be very sharp mentally, if you're lucky, but you're going to need to take downtime. And so I would really recommend that anyone who does have to work through their fast should try and carve out periods when they can just lie down, close their eyes, not necessarily sleep, but simply take some rest time, possibly 2 or 3 times through a work shift. On top of that, I think the most important question is the fact that any energy which is going to work is taking away from energy which could go to cleansing and healing. And for me, this is really what it's all about. If you're working through your fast, you're not going to be able to get the full potential out of your fast. This applies not just to the physical healing and cleansing which takes place, but also to the deeper emotional and spiritual levels. So if you have any desire whatsoever to go there, to deeper into self, working just more or less makes that impossible. You're stuck on the surface level dealing with the mundane issues of everyday life in your job. Okay. Above and beyond this now, there's another mundane issue which working through your fast brings on. Most people, when they work, they're involved somehow with other people. And the problem is that if you do work through your fast, you're going to have to deal with colleagues, people you come in contact with, who sooner or later are going to realize you're water fasting. And that means you're going to have to deal with questions of why are you water fasting? You're going to have to deal with curiosity, worries, perhaps even downright resistance. And when you've got to put extra energy into working in the first place, the last thing you're going to want to do is to have to put even more energy into explaining why you're doing a water fast. All these issues combined basically reduce the chance that you're going to successfully complete your water fast. I'd say that if there's a single factor which forces people to break off their fast before the time that they were originally aiming for, is if they're working or if they're not working. A job really makes it harder to complete a fast, and this especially applies to fasts of more than 1, 2, 3 days. There are a lot of disadvantages. There's only one advantage I can think of at all, and that is that by working through your fast, you're less absorbed by potential cravings, food addictions, these kinds of things. And especially for people who don't have a lot of fasting experience, those cravings can be a little scary. Working helps you to get through those. Beyond that, though, I think we need to ask ourselves, is it really good that we're distracting ourselves from those cravings or potential hunger pangs? And I think ultimately the answer is no, it's not good to be distracting. In the end, it's a form of denial of the fact that we're fasting. I would argue that experiencing life to its fullest is the most important thing we can do. The same thing I would also argue applies to fasting. We should experience the fast to the deepest possible level, and that does mean facing hunger pangs sometimes, facing food addiction, facing cravings. And by working through a fast, you're only getting half the picture, and you're not going to be able to move beyond these kinds of addictions and fears related to hunger. So as you can see, there are several disadvantages to trying to work through a fast. The actual amount that these will actually impact on the fast, negatively of course, depends from person to person. It really does. A lot depends on the amount of fasting experience you already have. The more you have, generally speaking, the easier it is to get through a fast while working. And also, if you don't have a lot of fasting experience, body weight actually is probably the most important factor of all. People who are overweight or obese tend to find they have a lot more energy than people who are thin. And that's simply because if you're overweight, you have more fat cells to burn. As a result, you have more energy. If you do have to work through a fast, there are a few things you can do to minimize the impact of the work itself. Now, the first thing I would really urge anyone to do is to try and minimize the amount of work you're going to have over the period of your fast. If you can somehow clear it out ahead of time, if you can push some of the work until after the fast, that's really the best thing you can do. Another thing you can do, especially for shorter fasts, let's say a 3-day fast, is to arrange it around a weekend. So for instance, if you're going to do a 3-day fast, begin the fast on a Friday, finish it on a Sunday. Day 1 of a fast means that your energy levels are pretty much the same as in everyday life because you're still burning through your glycogen. And then you have Saturday and Sunday to rest fully when you run out of that energy store and ketosis has to begin working. If you're doing a longer fast, then again, weekends are definitely important. If you're going to do a 10-day fast, for instance, then I would say it makes a lot of sense to begin on a weekend, work through the week, end on the following weekend, and then you at least gain 2 weekends as part of the whole duration of your fast. Likewise, national holidays, any kind of extra time off is a good idea to take advantage of. If you have vacation time, of course, that's another option as well. Now, during the work time itself, there are a couple of techniques you can apply which I normally would not recommend during a fast, but if you've got to get through the day and you're finding you have a hard time doing so, it may be worth thinking about trying this. Now, the first is caffeine. If you really need extra energy, then you might consider using green tea as an option to help you get through the day. Definitely green tea over coffee, because coffee is acidic. It's going to effectively mar the inside of your intestines. It's going to activate your digestion a whole lot more than green tea. Green tea is slightly alkaline, so it's very neutral in terms of how it affects the digestion. Having said that, though, there is a disadvantage to using caffeine of any form during a fast. Caffeine obviously speeds up your metabolism. The whole point of a fast is to slow down your metabolism, your everyday metabolism, so that your healing mechanism, your healing metabolism can come into the foreground. Caffeine is going to get in the way of doing that. Nevertheless, if you've got to get through the day, maybe it's worth occasionally applying. One thing which is not worth doing is through a longer fast, just using caffeine every day. Your body will simply acclimatize to that, and you'll lose out on the potential benefit of the caffeine high. You'll just have your body working at a higher metabolic rate, which will then work against the fast. Another thing you can try, especially if you have low blood pressure, is to try taking electrolytes. A lot of people will say, I feel so much better on electrolytes. And it's true, if you have low blood pressure, what electrolytes do, electrolytes are basically mineral salts. As we all know, table salt increases your blood pressure. Now, in an electrolyte supplement, it's not going to be sodium chloride, but there will be other types of mineral salts. Any kind of salt is going to raise your blood pressure. And in raising your blood pressure, you may get a little bit extra energy out of it. Again, though, the disadvantage to doing this is the fact that your body is now processing extra chemicals, extra minerals going into it, when instead it should be simply left alone to get on with cleansing and detox. One other thing you can do if you have to work through a fast is just get some support. It can make a huge difference to have supportive friends, family. If you don't have that, then a fasting coach like myself can often help. And you've just got to try and help to bring the odds a little bit into your favor when they're really stacked against you by working through a fast. One final thing I'd just like to say is that so much of when we're fasting lies beyond our ability to control it. You're going to run out of glycogen in your body's own tempo. Your ketosis will pick up in your body's own tempo. You cannot control that, and as a result, you cannot control your energy levels. And most people do find that they're fatigued and they're slow and they're low on energy. Whether or not you work is something you can control. And it's probably the most important thing that you can control during a fast. And as a result, I'd really recommend that everybody thinks seriously about trying to take time off from their work before undertaking a water fast.